Hey, thanks for tuning in. We are LivingFit, your trainer's trainer. We not only have education courses for trainers to upgrade their game, but we have full on follow along programs, workouts, exercise breakdowns, nutrition plans, and fitness equipment for you to reach your fitness goals. Now, enjoy the show.
What's going on, guys? Master Coach, Education Director Aaron Guyett here with the Living Fit Show. And I have the incredible pleasure of having Dr. Tim DiFrancesco on. And I said that wrong, didn't I?
DiFrancesco, but we're there. We're right there.
Dr. Tim DiFrancesco on, which DiFrancesco, I should know that because that is the male, right? DiFrancesco is masculine and DiFrancesco would be feminine, and you clearly are a masculine specimen. So what the heck, man?
You got the hard part right, though. Most people get it's DiFrancesco, and then I have to put in the Chesco, and so you got the hard part right.
Oh well, but I still managed to get a little bit mixed up there. So without further ado, so Dr. Tim earned his DPT, right? Physical therapy. So got into physical therapy, then earned his DPT, not an easy feat. And then from there started actually pursuing clinical or using physical therapy in that sort of clinical setting, but then very quickly launched into this pretty incredible strength and conditioning career. And strength and conditioning is definitely different than physical therapy and being a doctorate of physical therapy. So I'm curious, as I hope that our audience is curious as well, what made you want to get into physical therapy, and then how did that sort of transmogrify, if I can use the Calvin and Hobbes version, right, into this strength, like pretty incredible strength and conditioning career, and now TD Athlete's Edge. So just curious into the beginnings and then the transformations.
Yeah. So the funny thing, that's exactly how, the sort of timeline of things that went down. Now, I always think back to sitting outside of a practical exam with one of my buddies in PT school, and he's like, "Hey, man, I think I'm gonna take that CSCS exam, the Certified Strength and Conditioning Coach exam." And he's like, "You thinking about taking that and adding to the DPT background once we graduate and stuff?" And I was like, "Man, I'm just trying to get through this clinical exam right now. I can't even think about that. So not really on my radar. Good luck to you." And he's like, "Yeah, there's an exam coming up next month." I'm like, "Well, we've got these 5 final exams coming up right now. I'm not trying to think about adding that." And I don't know, man. Once I got into, and so from that moment, I can always remember having it just not be what I could focus on. I think that's just, we can get into this later, but I tend to be somebody who's very zero in on what's right in front of me right now, which a lot of times that's good. Sometimes it can be hard for me, but, Right. I just was so locked in on that I wasn't focused on it. Then I got into the PT realm and started practicing in a basic outpatient insurance-based PT clinic setting. I said, you know what? This isn't going to do it for me. This isn't going to give me goosebumps every day for the rest of my career. I really have to get my hands on a different hammer in this sort of umbrella of what we can apply to people. And I realized there that hammer was being able to prescribe strength, guidance and coaching and programming, and do that with a lens as a physical therapist. And so off I went. I just took a cannonball into that pool, always keeping my lens of the PT background and the understanding of, rehab, tissue pathology and tissue recovery, but really being able to use that and getting really comfortable. Most PTs are not comfortable. They like to get that other dual certification and be able to say I'm a DPT, but I'm also a strength coach, but they don't identify first and foremost as a strength coach the way that I was very early on very comfortable doing, because they feel like, well, I just put all this money and time into getting this DPT and like to puff their chest out about being a doctor of physical therapy. And why would they want to hide that in the second sort of part of their bio, so to speak, or the second set of letters? Whereas, I just was really I thought it was, almost a no-brainer in most ways to be able to say that's the biggest hammer and the best hammer for me anyways, to be able to provide to people. So I'm just going to own it, and I'm going to use my PT as something that I used as a stepping stone to get to the strength and conditioning aspect of things. So just trying to be able to have there not be a gap in the language and a gap in the prescription of things was something that really was an eye-opener for me. Once I got into that PT clinic setting, I saw people getting done with what I was helping them with, and then wondered, like, where are they going from here before they go back to the activities that they love. And there's just not this in-between period or this prescription of what happens after you get done with that acute rehab. And it drove me nuts to the point where it just was, where all I wanted to do was be able to fill that gap.
Yeah, right. It's so odd. It's like, let me get you to be able to walk out the door, but you can't step into the ring, right, or you can't step onto the soccer pitch, or you can't step onto the basketball court. It's like, yeah, that, and what an incredible way to, really do a reverse stepping stone. Cause I've seen a ton of fitness professionals, strength coaches and stuff end up going, oh, well, I need to level up. So then they level up to that DPT. Right. But you're like, no, I did DPT and now but the crazy part is you weren't stepping down. You just leveled up the strength realm, right? It's like, okay, yeah. So is there are there any other extra sort of clinical or extra academic coursework or certifications aside from like the CSCS, like that's a pretty mainstay in the strength world or whatever, strength and conditioning world. But is there any other avenues or education that you've found aside from obviously, research and looking at studies and things like that? But are there any other certs or anything like that you would recommend or that you've taken that you're like, oh, that's good? Yeah.
So I think early on I was going to the buffet, and just really exploring. I was just, every chance I got, I would, I heard somebody somewhere within Mike Boyle, Gray Cook, and that sort of Mount Rushmore of when I was coming up and still there really, of kind of who propelled our profession into what it is now today, is somebody said something along the lines of how much they spent in the early years of their career, the percentage of money that they spent from their early career earnings on Con Ed, and it was a big number. And I just said, okay, well, if that's what the Rushmore guys are doing, then must not be a bad idea. And also I loved it. I also was just sort of like a kid in a candy shop of being able to get my hands on any article I could, or any course, or any sort of, whether it was a conference or anything that I could get to really understand how do I begin to weave my own language within all the knowledge that's out there and all the evidence that's out there and the people that are applying it and what are they saying. So I think some of the ones that for me, one of the ones that stands out the most was going to, at the time it was Athletes Performance, now Exos, doing one of their week-long mentorships. I think for me, that's where I very first saw the woven language of methodology, of both coaching and programming strategy and methodology, being able to put that into such a just beautiful orchestra of prescription of what we do from a rehab to strength and conditioning profession standpoint. And it was like a huge sort of aha moment that this isn't sort of exercises that you select from these random spots and you kind of, mush them together and see what happens. And then you try again and you try again. It was like, no, this was a methodology and a system that's been put in place that has, the potential to be applied to really anybody, depending on their starting points. And that just fascinated me. The other part that fascinated me about that was that what they did so well was not only create that system and the methodology and the curriculum of what they have behind them, but also they do it in this sort of team-wide approach. And so those two things are, to me, they really resonated at that time, and became sort of the basis of what I wanted to be able to do through ultimately TD Athletes Edge. But I think that was one of the really big ones that and honestly, I also look at some really informal teaching moments that I had with, with people where I would just contact professionals in the field that had either that were geographically near me and weren't sort of renowned industry wide, or were industry wide renowned, and asked if I could just be a fly in the wall, and I can think of my trips to Quinnipiac University and just standing in the back room of the strength and conditioning room at watching Brajesh Patel do his thing, and just see how a craftsman does their craft. And I always went into those looking at it from not what can I take and copy from this person, but actually like what are the things that this person does that maybe wouldn't fit into my philosophy as I'm crafting it. And so I just think, that's an important sort of way to frame it, because first of all, what you're doing, if you look at it that way, is you're saying A, that you have a philosophy, and B, if you're saying that, then you're beginning to build one, and running it through your own philosophy filter is much better than just saying copy paste.
Yeah, right. Like, does it buttress and affirm, or affirm what I'm doing, or is this non-existent in the philosophy? Does it need to exist, or does it not? Right. So
because the copy paste,
that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the copy paste is done, I think too much by people early on. They're just sort of trying to latch on to one person, like, oh yeah, that I like what that person does, so let me just kind of copy paste what they're doing. But that works for that one person because they've dialed that through their filters, and they're putting that through their own lens, and they've created it that happens to work for them and only for them. It's unique to them, and so I think that's really important.
Yeah, that is super important. So I love, because you were talking about, again, having almost like this harmonious, like synergistic through line from like, okay, being a doctor of physical therapy, but then taking it through to, athletes, and there's this like almost continuous line. And I mean, at the end of the day, and you were talking about programming with Exos and stuff like that, it's like, and at the end of the day, it is tissue adaptation, right? I mean, yes, there's other things going on, but it's like, this is tissue adaptation. So I wonder then, so when you're standing in front of, whether it's a professional NBA player on the Lakers, or somebody that's coming through TD Athletes Edge, right? How do you take out the 20-pound words or $40 words or whatever that it just makes people's eyes spin and like, oh my gosh, I don't know what you're talking about? Is it education on that, or is it education so they actually know what you're saying, or are you able to reframe it or say it in a way that's like, oh, okay, the layperson can understand this, and now I can immediately implement it? I'd be curious to see your approach there.
Well, I love what, first of all, I just really hit me when you said it's all comes down to tissue adaptation. I thought I was listening to myself there for a second, and it's that we can have that sort of language of using those words and know what we're talking about between us and the audience here. But when you're working with that Gen Pop person who you start saying tissue adaptation, like, what does that mean? It's like, I learned over time, just by saying things in a way that didn't resonate enough, to then saying, let me say it a different way. Let me say it, to finally, really refining my language. It's like, look, your back is cranky right now. Nobody's driving around with a brand new car off the lot. Don't panic. Don't worry about it. We'll get to we'll get to a point where we've, cracked the code on this. It's going to take a little bit of time. But one thing we know is, whether we're talking about muscles, which everybody looks at muscles as tissues that adapt and get stronger. So that's an easy one for people. But I remind people, is like, your bones, your tendons, your ligaments, all those things, they respond to loading by getting stronger too. So, there, I think right then and right there, just kind of as I said it right there, is how I would say it to somebody who's Gen Pop, who's kind of just in a frustrated zone of having a low back flare up, and they're like, they don't want to be having their head spin around by thinking that they're in some sort of a thesis presentation. And that only is confusing to them. And also the language that we use around pathology can be really damning to people without being malicious on purpose in our in our field. And so I've learned to really be able to kind of have people become, understand what's normal and understand that, there's not the death sentence when you have some sort of a either chronic or acute injury, that this is the cool thing. This is one of the reasons why I'm in this field, is because our body is not, it's not do or die. It's not static. It's not, okay, if this is the way it is now, then this is the way it stays. Our body's tissues do adapt, and they adapt to loads and stresses. And if we can crack the code of how much to apply, when and how and where, then we have this really cool option and opportunity to be able to affect and impact change with people that don't realize many times that that's even possible with the human body.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. That's so good. And the fact that you're like, yeah, it's not a new car off the lot and crack the code. And it's like, people get those metaphors, right, and they can, that's easy language. It's like, okay, cool. I don't have to know exactly, what part of my vertebrae or what ligament or tendon or like how the nervous system is connecting. And right, I don't need to know all these crazy complex things, this almost like chaos theory of connection that's happening in the body. I can just know that, I'm not brand new, and we will work through this and figure this out. And this philosophy and this programming is going to help you uncover that. And there you go. Yeah. Man, there's so much comfort in that. Right. So I want to talk a little bit about your obviously your time in the NBA, your time with the Lakers, so any of the coaches and personal trainers that are on here, not all of them, but a lot of them be like, that's the end all be all. That is the pinnacle of success. Like, that's where I want to be. And I think there's a few that would say no, or they've kind of been there and they're like, maybe I'd rather do this or rather do that. So you're there, right, at what a lot of people view as the pinnacle of success. Then as you're there, you're building TD Athletes Edge, and now you're primarily TD Athletes Edge. Yep. So why the switch? Talk maybe a little bit about your experience there and why that was amazing or good, or if you have some funny stories or whatever. Yeah. But then also I really am curious on, people are like, hey, you were on top and now you went to TD Athletes Edge. What happened?
Right.
And
No, yeah, it's so I was definitely as I sort of built out my education-based background and then got into early professional years of working in an initial PT outpatient clinic, as I talked about before, and kind of starting to work with and starting up the first version of TD Athletes Edge in the back of a batting cage where a blue tarp would protect people doing one arm, 3-point rows from, the baseballs getting hit our way. As I was doing that, I definitely had people and the name of TD Athletes Edge coming to, life at that time. And people saying to me, like, are you going for the pros? Like, you have the background to do it. You have doctor of physical therapy, you have CSCS, you have athletic training background, and I really wasn't. I mean, I was very focused on what I could do with TD Athletes Edge. I can honestly say, I would tell people then that, I just have a sense that at that level, you're dealing with a lot of stuff that we don't all see or know about. And I'm not sure I want to do that. And I really have this big goal and vision and mission with TD Athletes Edge. And, so I wasn't like grasping for it. I wasn't pushing resumes across people's desks and seeing if I could, get in touch with somehow through a friend of a friend or somebody who knew somebody who was on the, assistant to the assistant strength coach of, whatever. But what happened was it kind of, and the world happens this way often is, when you're not sort of squeezing so hard to get something that you feel like is going to validate you, it can come your way, by accident or by, just that's the way the universe works sometimes. And so I think that is part of what happened. And I had taken this job after I graduated PT school. I worked at the PT clinic that I first started at, outpatient, started up TD Athlete's Edge on the side in that batting cage facility, and then was buying dumbbells on mismatched dumbbells on Craigslist and to build things out for myself. And then I had this opportunity to get my high school basketball coach called me and said, "Hey, do you think your brother, not me, would want this position that he's telling me I just took a job with the Bakersfield Gym and out in Bakersfield, California, as assistant basketball coach. We're looking for a strength coach and an athletic trainer. Do you think your brother, who also has the same background as I do, he's now finishing med school, but at the time was working with the Yankees in their farm system, and do you think he would want to scope out the position we have opening here?" And he couldn't because the baseball season didn't end in time for him to get there for basketball season and all that stuff. But I said, you know what? I know you're checking in on if my brother wants to do it. And, the thing was my coach was sort of just saying, like, look, you're just starting your career as a PT. You're just getting TD Athlete's Edge off the ground. I'm assuming you don't have time to do this. But I was like, actually, I kind of do. I've done what I need to do. I'm not looking to spend any more time in this clinic setting than I have to. I'm trying to get out of that. And, what I can do is I can sort of go during the basketball season and do this position and keep TD Athlete's Edge running with some of, both my brother helping with that and some other people helping with that. And I was like, I can do it. At that time in my life, I could traipse across country every 6 months and go do that. And I did. And so what that did, though, was it just put me in some of the circles without me knowing it and on the radar of certain people, including Gary Vitti, legendary athletic trainer for the LA Lakers for 28 years, went to 12 finals, has 8 rings. And, the Lakers had sent a couple people down once I got that job with Bakersfield, and a couple of their players came down. I worked with them. He really liked what I did. He liked their feedback. He also was looking for a strength coach who had a PT background. And at that moment, there just wasn't a lot of them. And especially not a lot that had my reversed sort of frame on it. It was like, I was calling myself a strength coach, not a PT. And I was not even looking for a PT job in either any setting. If I were to take a job in the pros, I wasn't going to go in as a PT anyways. And so it was really kind of all came together in that sense. I was what Gary was looking for. He asked me at one point if, when the Lakers call and they say, we have a strength coach position open, you're the person we're looking for, would you be willing? And the answer is yes. So,
right.
That's how that kind of came about. My time with the Lakers was just so rich and intense, as what I would call it. It was both of those things. It was a crash course. I was new kid on the block. 29-year-old, never had NBA experience, and all of a sudden I'm the head strength coach for Kobe and Pau and Metta World Peace and Steve Nash and Dwight Howard, and so it's like, yeah, okay, here we go,
Yeah.
And funny story is one of the first sessions I got, there was sort of a handoff from Tim Grover to me in terms of what working with Kobe, and first session, I'm in there with Kobe in a hotel gym. Trying to think of what city we were in, but it'll come to me. But he comes in and he's he's clearly waiting to see what this new kid's going to do with him, and I go something like a dumbbell floor press into some of the, at the time, the hottest exercise was those wall slides. You stand against the wall,
Yeah.
do that shoulder mobility work there. So we go dumbbell floor press, and then we go. I show him, okay, now we're going to go up to the wall and we're going to open up those shoulders a little bit, and we're going to do. He goes, look, man, I don't do any of that candy shit. So give me another dumbbell exercise to go with this other dumbbell exercise, and we're going to get strong, and we're going to get strong as fuck. So let's go. And so, that was like, Yeah. Okay. So, anyways, the next exercise, we're going to go dumbbell. We're going to go, and that was like it. Just was. I had to learn on the fly how to connect and relate and deal and really be able to be a concierge to those level of guys. And then we also had your 19, 21-year-old guys, 19, 20-year-old guys coming through, Julius Randle and D'Angelo Russell coming through, who were still 19 when I got them and had no idea what it meant to work hard and to be consistent. And, for me to really teach that to them was a whole different ball of wax. So it was a lot of, different kind of being able to be a chameleon in those spaces there for me. And I think, from my standpoint, I got to be around some really excellent, being around somebody like Gary Vee and just soaking up what you could from somebody that had been in that space for 28 years and seeing somebody orchestrate a staff like that. And then also being around great clinicians like Judy Cito, who's now the director of performance at the Lakers, now one of the best clinical PTs that I've ever been around, and that kind of thing. That's where the richness of the experience was for me, and just being able to kind of figure it out on the fly as I went, and spent 6 years as that head strength coach position, and then really just getting to the point where at the first 2 years, I think it was like it was a honeymoon. I was thinking to myself, well, maybe I do want to do this for the long haul. Maybe I didn't think so, but I'm here now. It's pretty, there's some richness to this opportunity. I want to play it out. And then, years 3, 4, 5, you kind of start to have that TD Athlete's Edge mission and vision creep back up. And I had to put that into a dormant state for a while. And, I really couldn't deny what was there for me there, and being able to kind of start to say, okay, how many years do I want out of this before I have had enough, or before it's enough to build credibility into my next move? And I had always felt like the 6 to 10 year mark was going to be somewhere in the ballpark. And at year 6, Magic and Rob Pelinka took over for the ownership or the management that I came in under was Mitch Kupchak more. And there was just differences in terms of what I wanted to get out of my position at that point, and what it wanted to become and what they were seeing. And the option was there for me to stay. And I just said, look, this is, for me, I think the time. I don't want to sort of force anything here between us and have either side not be, satisfied with what is happening. And so it's my time to ride off into the next chapter of, another rich and intense experience with TD Athlete's Edge.
Yeah, that's awesome. And how cool is it that, and I mean, well, aside from, I'm sure there's probably a million stories of the difficulty and the stress and the travel and the, the schedule and all of that stuff too. Right. But, and the fact that are you still living on the other side of, well, I mean, I guess if you're just traveling a bunch, then that's one thing, but you're in LA, yeah. I'm sure doing most of your work. And then are you still living in Mass at that time, or did you finally move?
So my wife and I moved out to LA, and we're in Manhattan Beach.
That makes sense.
When I was in Bakersfield pre-Lakers, I was back and forth. When the season was over, I was back. And, we really hit the exit button and got really full on West Coast at that time. So we were all in, all out there. But, that position doesn't allow you to be sort of planted in any one place for very long.
Right. Yeah. And so then you go back, right. And this is the beginning of TD Athlete's Edge, which isn't the beginning, as now right. I'm right. Like, so you had that before, but this is now really a completely different rendition because of the richness of your experience with the Lakers and out in Bakersfield and all of that. I'm sure like that just adds a million tools to the tool set, so to speak, and levels up your philosophy, like you were saying, right? Incredibly so. So how does that then start to take form? And then I want to get into like, okay, where are we at today from the beginnings as well?
Yeah. So I think from what one of the things I had somebody from within my network of colleagues in the NBA after I had sort of announced I'm headed out, and people reaching out, and one strength coach in the NBA said to me, what's your plan B though? Like, I get it. Like, you're going to take a stab at TD Athlete's Edge and really blow oxygen into that and do what you can there. But what's your plan B from that? And I was like, I don't have one. I don't even want to think about having one, because, to me, that's all that's going to do is make it that much easier for me to not, squeeze every drop out of what I'm going to try to get out of this and how I'm going to do this. And I don't want that excuse. I don't want that option there. I want my back to the wall. I want to see what happens when I have to fight out of this thing and I have no other option.
Yeah, well, that's what you're saying at the beginning, right? It's like this is a double-edged sword. It's a great thing, but it can also be a bad thing, right? It's like, I'm super focused on this. I'm not going to pull out the CSCS books right now because I'm getting my DPT. It's like same thing. TD Athlete's Edge, here we come. Come hell or high water. This is what I'm going to try to do with every ounce of my being. I love it.
Yeah. And so that has proven, always to be, it definitely, I wouldn't say by any means has been, an easy path of etching TD Athlete's Edge out of stone from scratch. But, having that positive pressure and saying, we're going to figure this out, and having the right people when I, have that moment of doubt from time to time creep in and say, can we pull this off? God damn, this is hard. And, tried the sixth iteration of how we're going to do something. And, it's like, nah, it's still not working. How are we going to do this? And, having people around me. And like I said before, for me to be able to do it in a team, it just, I think that's harder. I think it's, to be a one man, solo show. You're wearing more hats, but it's easier because you're not managing anything but yourself, and so you you end up with a lot more work to do because it's all got to be done by you. But the management of, who's doing what is there's only one answer. And so, and so
if there's a personnel problem, it's just you.
Exactly. and so for me, that was like, I always wanted to be able to do it in the way that is harder, but ultimately in my eyes, more fruitful when you can accomplish as a group and as a team. And that's what we do on a day-to-day basis. And I tell my team, we're 3-4 years into this iteration of TD Athlete's Edge in a physical location here outside of Boston, Mass. But I'm still a rookie at being a leader. I'm still a rookie at being, a manager of people. My craft expertise comes in understanding tissue adaptation, as we talked about earlier. But that's a whole different skill set and expertise and area than what my role at TD Athlete's Edge is primarily, which is, beyond the methodology that we're writing and that we're developing and the system and the seamlessness from our coaches, one coach to another, that kind of thing, is managing people, leading people, and understanding, how to grow people toward a common mission. And that is, really the big sort of, that's what TD Athlete's Edge needs from me the most.
That's awesome. And so now you're in this completely new position, doing pretty much completely new stuff. I mean, obviously you can carry with and then teach people these incredible programs and this philosophy and all of this. But teaching it, well, doing it with the Lakers and then teaching it and leading it are obviously two totally different things. So then what is the philosophy, or what is the methodology, or what is it that you are leading at TD Athlete's Edge that makes it, one, so important that you're like, no, I'm going to move to this thing, right?
Yeah.
And two, that has now sort of blossomed into what it has become, right?
Yeah, I think that what we're trying to do is leave the industry with a higher bar and with an imprint and leave our impact at TD Athletes Edge on the industry from here on out. And I think that's, what I talk to our team about is, for me, this is quite the opposite of, I want to start a business and I want to do it in Silicon Valley and I want to blow a ton of oxygen and money into something as big as I can, because then I'm going to flip it and, do one of these and head off to, Cabo and be good, is like, my mission is to be able to have this be something that is a hallmark and something to measure up against, but also something that bears fruit for people in this industry from here on out. And that's where this is. This is not. There's no timeline on what that could take. I mean, the real sort of the people that leave their mark in an industry are the ones that kind of just stuck with it the longest and just kept tinkering and kept getting better. They're not often the ones that were the best in the class. They weren't the ones that were the biggest sort of, so-called experts or that kind of thing. They just kept tinkering. They just kept chipping away and saying, we can, that's good, but we can get better. That's good. We got there. Now, but guess what? I think we can get better. I think we can shed some skin here and look even different in this way. And we can just keep sort of, being able to evolve and continuing to be sustainable and growing amongst our team, but growing within the industry. And that, we're at the tip of the iceberg, and we've done a bunch. I mean, we're very proud of where we are right now, but there's, it's just the beautiful part is that there's a lot more of the path to go. And it's really as long as we want it to go. So I think that for us is what makes us sort of be excited to when the alarm clock goes off and be a part of this thing that, just has so much potential to be able to give to not only our team, not only our clientele, but people beyond that. And that's really the reason why leaving the Lakers was key for me, because I could only reach 15 rostered NBA players in that, and honestly be all in with them and not without sort of siphoning some of myself to try to spin this other plate on the other side. And that was fine. I'm an all in guy. So I was all in, but it just is never going to be enough for me to be able to be cut off at a 15 roster, person roster and say that's who I can impact. And so now, we're in this space where we've now sort of, I look at it as, we're sort of in 3.0 or 4 TD Athletes Edge 3 or 4.0, because 1.0 was us with a blue tarp and dumbbells, mismatched dumbbells off of Craigslist. And then there was sort of these in between periods where, we've taken different iterations, but now we're at 3 or 4.0 where we have not only the methodology that I see in my head when I sit down and write a program or coach somebody, that's actually on paper in curriculum. And so we can bring in a new coach and they can get coached up in our methodology and on both programming and coaching, but also what are the behaviors as a TD Athletes Edge teammate? What makes that person, fit into that behavior grouping and that kind of thing. So we have those things that some of it had to get figured out and blueprints had to get made before they could actually be something that people could follow and get behind and want to get behind. Now we had to, endure a pandemic. We lived to tell about it and feel grateful for that. We had an amazing team of people that was able to band together and figure that out. But now we have a really excellent, thriving in-person training model that acts as not only our flagship service of what we provide in an in-person format of things, but also our incubator of what we can create and do from day to day and grow from and help people from the end users of what we do, but turning that into sort of online prescription of our services and find ways to go from, I can, think back to, and we've all been there, sending spreadsheets or in the body of an email, supersets to somebody and trying to write out notes of what a lateral squat to curtsy squat actually looks like, and means you go right with the right foot and keep your chest up proud, and you have to type that stuff out, to having instructional videos at your fingertips and not have to leave an app to go watch the video and all this other stuff, and being able to see that stuff evolve and reach people. Again, we can reach a good chunk of people out of our facility here outside of Boston, but we can't reach as many people as we can through the internet. And so but you have to be able to reach them in a way that we're proud of, and not just reach them. That anybody can build up a reach if you do it the right way. If you put your head down and you just kind of you build that up, and there's strategies to do that, and there's ways to do that. But to reach somebody with something that's really lasting and impactful to them through online format is actually harder. It's way harder, because the part that makes training and coaching really impactful is when you have that ability to connect with the person and make something meaningful for them that they couldn't have got in another way or by somebody else. So to do that online is really hard, and I think we've really cracked the code on how we can do that in both formats. And I think the piece for me is, as I've said in different ways already, it's so important for me to be able to reach as many people as we can, but only as many people as we can at the level that we're proud of.
Yeah. Well, like you said at the beginning, right? It's like you're reaching 1 million people maybe, but now you've lost your philosophy, right? Like, and it's like, whoa, what was the point now of reaching 1 million if I can't reach them with the philosophy that I know is what's going to help them crack the code on, what it is that they need to do for themselves. And so it's cool that that's now like shining through in an online version, because you're absolutely right. Like, anybody can go and scroll on Instagram or scroll on YouTube and find an exercise and do a movement, but is it helping you? Right. Is it helping you crack the code on what it is that you need and whatnot? So that's incredible. So, so would that be now the big differentiator that is TD Athletes Edge? It's like, look, our in-person and now our online is helping you really understand what it is you need to do, meet you in that personal, differentiated way with our philosophy that we know works, because it's tried and true. We've done it time and time and time again. Is that?
Exactly.
Did I nail it? Did I get that right?
Absolutely. And I think the piece that we always, that fuels us and fuels our team is, when you hear somebody say like, I've been around the block. I've worked with trainers, I've worked with PTs, I've worked with, chiros, but I haven't seen it prescribed in this way. I haven't seen it prescribed with this level of precision. We talk about as a team, I think a lot of times a team-based approach to training and rehab the way we do is very akin to a restaurant. And there's a lot of parallels there. We talk about the French Laundry and what they do and the way that they do it. And if you know the French Laundry and what they are about, they are the gold standard when it comes to, dining service and restaurant service at a farm to table operation, and being able to do it at that level. They're not looking at like, well, where can we scale to the next. It's like, once we get to where we're outscaled to what we can provide at the level that we're proud of, that is our own standard, not what the industry says is good enough, then that's, and the precision that they put into the behind the scenes part of it is something that we strive for in every, before every shift that we have, morning shift, PM shift. We're sitting there like as if you would be in a restaurant, and, the head chef or the different people and deputies in that restaurant are going through, hey guys, here's what's on tonight. Here's where we got these ingredients. here's what, don't forget on the 9:00 reservation, we've got the person with the allergy. We need to make sure we take into account they're coming in with 2 kids, so be ready. We're going through that as if we're game planning and making it a service. We break each huddle pre each shift with 3, 2, 1 showtime, and that's our we really, for us, we're trying to again raise the bar and make this a special delivery of a service you can get anywhere, but in our way we don't think so. There's a great we're at this stage too right now where, which is pretty neat, is Seth Godin talks about his experience when he very first began going to, again, a restaurant analogy. It's so easy, and so he very first started going to Mama Fuko, David Chen's restaurant, which is a restaurant empire now, and he's a vegetarian, Seth Godin, so he would order the Brussels sprouts when they very first opened with no bacon, and they would do it for him. And then one day, a year in, David Chen comes out to Seth Godin and says, "Listen, we love having you here. Having you here is an honor for us. We love serving you. But we do pork in our Brussels sprouts, and we're not going to be able to make you a special set of Brussels sprouts anymore. There's a really great place 3 blocks down. They do vegetarian style Brussels. They're awesome. I actually get them once in a while myself, and I recommend you check their stuff out." And what Godin talks about is, look, that's when they became Mama Fuko. When they were like, this is our language. This is the way we speak this language. If you don't love our language, like, that's totally fine. We wish you the best. And there's somebody else that maybe speaks your language better, but that's kind of where we're at right now as a growing team. And it's definitely a neat place, because we've been in the place where whatever they want, if they want no bacon, make them happy. I mean, we just keep them in here, and so, I think any business has to go through that early stage where you just got to create, patrons and keep them where happy. But then some businesses really, define themselves at a point and is like, no, this is our language, and we're really proud of it. We've really put a lot into this. We have an exact reason why there's bacon in our Brussels sprouts, and we're not going to compromise that. And it's through no disrespect, but that's just our deal.
Yeah, that right there is, to me, when the entrepreneur that's sort of working for their business now has his or her business, right? It's like, no, now this is a business. Before, I was working for, and really a business that was an experiment, right? That I was hoping to be able to make money at or whatever, but I was having to work for it. But now it's like, no, the architect is like, done. Yeah. This is how it is. And there is a reason behind this is, how it is. Yeah. So that's amazing that whether it's the 3.0 or the 4.0, is like, that is an awesome place to be. That's incredible. And, Dr. Tim, I could go on and on. I love nerding out on business. Right. I love nerding out on fitness and tissue adaptation and all that stuff. This has been an incredible pleasure for me. But I'll wrap it up. Cool. And we always wrap up with what is LivingFit? So not LivingFit the brand, but LivingFit, this idea or this principle or this concept to our guests. And so I would love to hear Dr. Tim DiFrancesco. I would love to hear your version of or your definition of LivingFit.
So I think that it really comes down to understanding the direction of your grain. And what I mean by that is, just because something, whether we're talking about health and wellness strategies, or we're talking about, following your gut in your career or whatever it is, be brave enough to follow the direction of your grain. Know that your grain direction is not the same as anybody else's, and that's okay, to try to keep matting down your grain to another direction of where everybody else seems to be headed or says that, this is the right way to do this, and to, be balanced and be healthy. You have to be, you have to do all these things, or to be, satisfied or fulfilled or fit, or whatever we want to put sort of words and terminology on that. I think it's a matter of, really understanding it, what it is that makes you, and being brave enough to stand up for that and follow that. And I think that's the first step, because if you're going against your grain all the time and doing what everybody else says is, well, that's what fit is, or that's what healthy is, or that's what's fulfilling, or that's what should satisfy you, all that stuff, you're going to end up, waking up one day and be like, no, I'm actually not fulfilled. I'm actually not feeling super healthy. I'm actually not feeling super awesome about everything the way everybody said I should. And so I think for me, I just being able to, go with your grain, know where your grain, direction goes, and follow it, because it's different for all of us. And I think, from there, just being, what I would say is, that being said, be open to learning new ways, be open to learning and not being so rigid with everything that is part of your lens today. Everybody has a different lens, so look at everybody as a resource. Some will show you what not to do. Some will show you different ways of what to do. So if you can have both of those things, the bravery to go with your grain, and the sort of clarity and also bravery to go be open to learning and not so rigid to your way is the only way, then those two things kind of balance each other out in a way that I think is really powerful, really, really healthy, really fit.
Man, that's great. That's a great finish. I really appreciate the time that you took out to have this awesome conversation, and the stories that you shared all through your sort of fitness journey, and even obviously physical therapy was a part of that fitness journey. I got a ton out of it. I know everybody that's watching will get a ton out of it. The links to check out Dr. Tim DiFrancesco are down below in the show notes, or on the social media when we post that. So thank you again so much for coming on. It was an honor.
No, I appreciate it, Aaron. It's been a blast. I hope we get to do a round two at some point. And
absolutely,
I'm very open on the best, quickest way to get me is on Instagram at TD Athletes Edge, and DM me, and I'll get back to you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hey, for more interviews like that, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, if you're looking for not only those interviews, but follow along programs, exercise breakdowns, workouts, nutrition plans, and fitness equipment for your fitness results, make sure you hop on to living.fit, become a member today, and I'll see you on the next one.